All right, guys. Now we're going to take a look at supply and what that means. I'm going to go fairly quickly through this presentation, so please use the pause button if you need it. Go back, replay something if I go too quickly for you. But just to make sure I get through this in a timely manner, I'm gonna go fairly quickly. So start with supply. What we're going to talk about here is putting on a different mindset than we did with demand. So we're not talking about buying stuff, we're talking about really selling it and trying to sell it for various prices. So the example that I like to start with here is the idea that I need you to come and work for me. So I need you to come help me grade papers for all the students that I have. And I want you to think about how many hours during a week would you be willing to work for me if I paid you these amounts? Okay. So I really want you to think about, all the things you have going on during the week. How many hours would you give up to me in order to help me grade these papers? All right. So first price here is just $0 an hour. If I paid you nothing, how many hours would you be willing to work? So what I want you to do is I'm gonna put these prices up. There's gonna be a list come down here on your paper in your notes. Write down the price, and then out next to it, write down how many hours during the week you would work for me for that particular price. And if it's zero, then write zero. That's fine. The second price is $5 an hour. So what would you? How many hours would you work for me at $5 an hour? Third price is $10 an hour. Um, Next one is 15, and then the last two are 25. Or I'm sorry, $20 an hour and $30 an hour. Okay. So for each one of those, and do it individually, don't think as a whole, but individually, how many hours would you be willing to work for each one of these prices? If I was willing to pay you these amounts, how many hours would you work for me? Write that down on your notes or on a sheet of paper. Because the next thing I want you to do is I want you to graph that. So just like we did yesterday with demand, we've got our graph where we have the y-axis representing price, the x-axis representing quantity. I want you to go and graph what you just wrote down on that paper. All right. So if I'm going to move on, but if you need to pause here, draw your graph before you come back to this video. Okay, here's what your graph should look like, or something of this sort. It might not be this straight, but you should see, okay, you've got price here, you've got quantity here, and you probably have numbers on yours, but you should see that as I was willing to pay you more money, you were probably willing to work more hours. So your graph, your line should be sloping upward to an extent, meaning you're willing to work more as the pay increased, right? That essentially is supply. So first, let's talk about a little bit of stuff on your graph. First of all, if you describe your graph, you should be able to describe that basically it's showing you the quantity offered, how many hours you were willing to work at all the different prices. So from $0 an hour up to $30 an hour. How many hours were you willing to work for those various prices? So that information is conveyed on your graph. That information is shown as a schedule and a graph, like we did with demand. So you've got on the paper where you wrote the price and you wrote your hours, and then you've got the graph where you actually drew that out and graphed it, right? So it's the same thing as we had with demand. Question here is, who is the supplier? So in this example, who was the supplier? Hopefully answered you were, right? A supplier is anybody who's offering a product. In this example, we're talking about labor. Anybody who's offering something for sale, they are a supplier, and they've got to decide how much they want to offer based on the variety of prices that exist in the market. So you're making decisions about how you want to use your time based on the price that I was willing to pay you. Okay, that is supply. In a nutshell, this is what we're talking about with supply. So just like with demand, we're going to have a law of supply, something that's concrete that doesn't change. And that law is basically this, okay, is quantity offered for sale or quantity supplied it varies directly with the price of the product. So what that means essentially is as price goes up, what happened on your graph should be able to tell me. As price went up, more than likely you were willing to supply more. All right, you were willing to work more. So our definition here, law of supply, as price goes up, our quantity supplied also goes up. As price goes down, our quantity supplied also goes down. All right, so they're going the same way, essentially, is what the law of supply says. So let's talk about change in quantity supplied. This is the same thing as it was with change in demand. So make sure you can understand the difference. Quantity supplied, we're talking about 1 point on the graph. We're talking about how much is supplied at one price, okay? So when we say change in quantity supplied, we're talking about a change in the amount we are offering for sale because price changed. So once again, this is moving along the curve. We're going from one price to another. Price is either going up or it's going down. And what's going to happen is we're going to go to a different point on the same curve. So the curve doesn't move. Curve does not move. We're just going from one point, X, to another point, Y, or vice versa. That is caused by, same thing with demand, it's caused by a change in price. So changing price is going to cause movement along the curve. All right, the flip side of that is a change in supply. Okay, so change in supply. So this one, same thing as it was with demand. If we decide to offer different amounts for sale at every price. So even if the price doesn't change, we're going to supply more or we're going to supply less. Think about our example there. What if you have a job now, okay, it's probably impacting how much you're going to work for me. Well, let's just say you lose that job, you quit that job. Are you going to work more for me even though I'm paying you the same amount? Probably, okay? That would be a change in supply. So we are moving the curve. We're creating a brand new curve. The Beyonce rule still applies here. So we've got, if we are decreasing our supply curve, we're shifting to the left. We are increasing our supply curve, we're shifting to the right. All right. So it's very important with supply, though, that you understand, and that you put in your mindset. Increasing supply is movement to the right. Decreasing supply is movement to the left. If you start saying up and down here, trust me, you're going to start to get stuff wrong. Okay. So I'm going to stop there on this video, and you'll watch the next one, and we're going to go over the reasons why supply changes. So make sure you watch this next video once you've kind of gotten a good idea. If you need to go back and rewatch any parts of this one, please do so. Make sure write stuff down in your notes so that you understand the differences between change in quantity, change in supply, but also the differences between what supply is versus what demand is.